This semester, the observations I did were at Delaware Elementary School. This is an A-rated school despite its 92% poverty rate. Over the course of these 4 observations, I learned a great deal about literacy and learning theories, oral language development, reading instruction, and writing instruction. All 4 of these connected to the ideas we were learning in class. The classroom I was in was a 4th grade classroom. The teacher's name was Mrs. Cannon, and there were roughly 24 students in the class. The classroom was arranged with 6 tables in the middle, and 4 students sat at each table. At the front of the classroom was a Promethean board where the students would often sit during large group instruction time. Literacy was quite evident in the classroom, but more from the instructional standpoint rather than from the classroom environment. There was no real evidence of student work displayed on the walls or in the hallway. The only items on the walls were a few posters about the different types of writing and a few posters about behaviors and classroom jobs. One specific example of literacy instruction that I witnessed that tied in directly to what we were learning was having reading workshops. All of the students were having individual reading time while the teacher was conferencing with students individually and monitoring their progress. In their conference, they would simply talk about the book they were reading. Another example of literacy and learning theories that I observed in the classroom was that the teacher would walk around the classroom as the students were working on their literacy worksheets or reading silently, and she would take notes on a piece of paper. This tied in directly to what was stated in our book about how effective teachers should take anecdotal notes. I also found it intriguing that Ms. Cannon does a wonderful job of incorporating technology into literacy instruction. Each of the students have ThinkPads, which are essentially just laptops. They use these for a variety of reasons, including literacy practices. For example, one time they were journaling about something they had read in class, and they were using the ThinkPads. Oral language development should be an integral part in every lesson taught to students. In this particular classroom, I did not observe many examples of students being able to express themselves, which is an integral part of oral language development. Most times the teacher, Miss Cannon, was standing in the front of the room lecturing while the students were listening. However, one particular day was different. The students had just read a story, and the whole class was sitting in the front of the classroom in front of the Promethean board. The teacher was leading the class discussion, but for the most part, the students were the ones who were answering. Then she would take these answers and write them on chart paper that they had in front of the board. One of the ways to promote oral language development that we learned in our book was choral reading. This is where all the students read aloud together. I would have liked to have been able to see this as an example within this classroom. Instead, the teacher either had the students read individually or she read aloud to the students. Whenever the students do speak in class, they do not use an academic type language. They use their own dialect and words that they would use in casual conversation setting. In the book and in class, we talked about the importance of stressing academic language within the classroom. I wish we could have seen the teacher correct the students or tell them to use a more academic language. I did not see much differentiation as to reading instruction. Every time we were there, the students were usually reading on their own. There was not much evidence of the reading process used in the classroom. However, one day I did observe the responding step in the reading process when the students were journaling about the book they had read. In the times that I observed, I witnessed 3 different types of reading strategies being implemented. The first was individual reading, which is the type I witnessed most of. The second was shared reading, which was done in groups that each met with the teacher and they read a book together. The third type was reading aloud to the students. The teacher did this once while we were there. There were plenty of books around the classroom for students to choose from. The books are organized by reading level, and then the class set of novels are separated from the individual reading books. There is a chart displayed in the classroom stating the rules of individual reading time. These ranged everywhere from picking an appropriate book to choosing a book quickly and quietly. When the teacher used the type of reading instruction on reading aloud to students, I expected more. I expected the teacher to have expression in her voice and use different voices for different characters, like our textbook said to do and how we practiced in class, but she did not. She read the book monotone and all at one level. I think this made this difficult for students to be engaged. Since we observed in the classroom mainly during reading times, we did not see much instruction on writing. Although there was no student work displayed around the classroom, there were posters about the writing process and the different types of writing, such as informative, imaginative, personal, and narrative, and a few more different types of writing. One example we saw of writing instruction was within the pre-writing stage of the writing process. The class was sitting down in the front of the room in front of the Promethean board, and they were brainstorming about different things that had happened in the story they were reading. The teacher then wrote these on a chart paper, and the students copied it down onto their individual papers. Then the students went on to the drafting stage. They also did this as a class. They would come up with sentences, and the teacher would write the full and complete sentences on the Promethean board. Once all the sentences were written on the board, they read them out loud to make sure they made sense. Then the students copied it down onto their individual pieces of paper. The only type of writing that we observed in the classroom was expository writing. This was where they were writing in journals about the stories that they had read, and when they were brainstorming and writing what the teacher was saying. I wish we could have seen more from the writing process, like whenever the students are in the editing stage. I would have liked to seen how they do the editing and how they edit each other's. Overall, I felt as though these school observations helped me to truly connect what we were learning in the class to how it actually is being taught in the school today. I wish I could have seen more about each topic covered, but time-wise this would not have been possible. It was interesting to be able to make these real-world connections instead of simply reading about the topics in our textbook. I feel as though this observation experience truly gave me some insight into how literacy instruction should actually be. It taught me that we will use the tools that we are reading in our textbook in our everyday classroom. It showed me how important it is to incorporate all these tools and to be enthusiastic about them so the students will be engaged and learn what they need to so they are successful.